In 2014, an Australian businessman named Sam Lee claimed that his Bitcoin mining company, the Bitcoin Group, was about to become the first crypto-related company to go public on the Australian Stock Exchange. Sam Lee and his co-founder Ryan Shu have built large-scale Bitcoin mining facilities around the world and use hundreds of supercomputers to mine tens of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin each day. They plan to raise 20 million Australian dollars at their IPO. They indeed did the IPO, but raised 6 million Australian dollars, less than one-third of their target. As one of the listing requirements in Australia, a newly IPO'd company is required to obtain an independent auditor's report which says the company has enough cash to survive for the next 12 months. Given the lackluster size of the IPO, the auditor decided that they did not have enough capital to meet this requirement. Thus, they had to return cash to investors and scrap the IPO plan. Despite the failure to execute the IPO, Sam Lee and Ryan Shu didn't give up. They rebranded the Bitcoin Group to Blockchain Global, which would expand beyond Bitcoin mining. For example, they founded a crypto exchange called ACX.io. ACX ended up being a fraud and shut down in 2020, leaving its customers on the hook for $15 million of losses. It was basically a smaller version of FTX. Blockchain Global co-founder Ryan Shu also created an altcoin called Molecular Future, which currently trades for about 2/1000th of a penny. While Ryan Shu and Sam Lee have been involved in the crypto industry since 2014, by 2020 all of their ventures had been either failures or scams. But this didn't stop them from launching their biggest venture yet in the summer of 2020. They rebranded their company again to Hypertech and launched an investment offering called Hyperfund. Hyperfund promised investors returns of 1% every single day, and ultimately raised $1.9 billion from investors. As you might have guessed, Hyperfund was a Ponzi scheme, and investors ended up losing everything. In this video, we'll look at the insane story of how failed crypto entrepreneurs ran one of the largest frauds in history. Before we get into today's video, a quick word from today's video sponsor, Public. You might know Public.com as the all-in-one investing platform. Now they've launched options trading, and with it, they're doing something no other brokerage has ever done before. Public is sharing 50% of their options trading revenue directly with you, the customer. So whenever you trade options on Public, you get something back. And of course, there are no commission or per contract fees either. By sharing 50% of their options revenue, you'll know exactly how much they make from your options trades, because Public is literally giving you half of it. In other words, it's a more transparent approach to options with no fees, and you get something back on every single trade. So go to public.com and activate options trading by March 31st to lock in your lifetime rebate. Paid for by Public Investing. Must activate options account by March 31st for revenue share. Options are not suitable for all investors and carry significant risk. Full disclosures can be found at public.com/options, US members only. In 2020, there was a widespread crypto bull market following the pandemic and the Fed's zero interest rate policies. Millions of people around the world were just learning about cryptocurrencies. They didn't know exactly what they were or how they worked, but they wanted to get a piece of the action. This was a perfect environment to launch Hypertech and its Hyperfund investment offering. Hypertech portrayed itself as a leader in blockchain technology. While their commercials were highly produced, their contents were comically nonsensical. For example, here they have a chart labeled annual earnings, measured in billions of dollars. At the end of the chart, the line rises almost up to the 6,000 level, which represents $6 trillion. It's unclear what this chart is supposed to represent, but the generic commercials were not the only marketing method employed by Hypertech. Most of their marketing took the form of affiliates who would host Zoom presentations, explaining what Hyperfund is and convincing prospective investors to join. Two of Hypertech's biggest affiliates were the crypto influencers known as Bitcoin Beauty and Bitcoin Rodney, real names Brenda Chunga and Rodney Burton. Both of them earned millions of dollars in commissions from Hypertech. The Zoom presentations consisted of flipping through a PowerPoint with a Hypertech affiliate narrating. The presentations claimed that blockchain and decentralized finance represent the biggest wealth transfer of our lifetimes, with trillions of dollars at stake. Hypertech is offering ordinary investors an opportunity to share in this wealth creation journey. They then gave a biography about the two co-founders. Sam Lee is a well-known blockchain early adopter and co-founder of Blockchain Global. While this is technically true, they didn't mention that Blockchain Global went bankrupt and ceased operations in 2019. They claimed that he spoke at the World Economic Forum in the United Nations. He gave appearances on mainstream media outlets including CNN, the BBC, Forbes, and Bloomberg. I could find no evidence of any of this. The second co-founder, Ryan Shu, had an even more impressive resume, being a self-made billionaire and one of the world's biggest crypto miners since 2009. His resume is completely nonsensical. For example, he claims to have been an angel investor in 12 of the top 20 cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. This is impossible to be true, as Bitcoin did not have any angel investors. With that being said, there is some truth on this slide. He indeed co-founded an altcoin called Molecular Future. We'll get into the significance of this later. So how does Hypertech generate revenue? Most of their supposed revenue streams are vague BS such as, quote, launch innovative projects, unquote. But we can analyze some of their more specific claims. They claim to be engaged in large-scale crypto mining and also own a crypto exchange from which they generate transaction fees. Blockchain Global, the predecessor company to Hypertech, was indeed engaged in large-scale Bitcoin mining in the past, but it was never profitable and they had ceased all mining operations in 2019, 1 year before the launch of Hyperfund. In a private audio call which was being recorded without Sam Lee's knowledge, he explained, quote, in a bull market, the mining machines are overpriced. In a bear market, they're worthless, alright? And there is no gauge to make sure that you're able to guarantee profit, unless you have free electricity, which no one in this world has. A lot of the narrative that was promoted to the Hyper community is inaccurate because, sure, it was great demonstrating that, yeah, we were the 4th largest miner in the world, but it doesn't mean anything when we had to sell all of our bitcoins for a couple $100s just to pay for electricity. The answer is no, unquote. Sam Lee and Ryan Shu were indeed early adopters of Bitcoin going all the way back to 2014. If they played their cards right, they could have become very rich. Unfortunately, they had to sell all the Bitcoin they mined to pay for mining machines and electricity. So by the time Blockchain Global shut down in 2019, they had almost nothing to show for their 5 years of mining. They indeed also had a crypto exchange called ACX, which they launched in 2017, but this collapsed in 2020. After this, they founded another crypto exchange called Who.com. However, it's unlikely this exchange generated significant revenue. It was mainly used by Hyperfund investors, as we will see shortly. Hypertech's main product offering was an investment opportunity called Hyperfund. To invest in the Hyperfund, you had to purchase a membership, the cheapest of which cost $300. They promised you would receive daily rewards of between 0.5% and 1% every single day. At this rate, a $300 investment would triple to $900 after 600 days. In their presentation, Hyperfund affiliates would emphasize the power of compound interest. If you invested $10,000 and received a return of 20% per month, which is roughly what Hyperfund promised, you would receive $2,000 per month or $24,000 per year. But if instead of withdrawing the money, you leave it on the platform and allow it to compound, the $10,000 will grow to $100,000 by the end of the year. Obviously, you would much rather make $100,000 than $24,000. Of course, this whole scheme was a giant Ponzi scheme that would collapse as soon as enough investors tried to withdraw their funds. Thus, it was imperative to convince them to leave their money on the platform for as long as possible. Additionally, Hyperfund offered a referral program. If you refer someone who invests in Hyperfund, you will receive 20% of the rewards they receive as a referral bonus. If that person you referred to then refers someone else, you'll receive 15% of the new person's rewards, and so on. It's a classic pyramid scheme. People will convince their friends and family to join Hyperfund through word of mouth. This is a highly effective marketing ploy because your victims act as your salespeople. For example, Hyperfund's top affiliate was a crypto influencer who went by the name Bitcoin Beauty. She was first recruited by another affiliate and invested $5,000 of her own money into the scheme. She went on to refer thousands of other people to join and eventually earned $3.7 million of referral commissions. Hyperfund clearly targeted unsophisticated investors who knew little about cryptocurrencies. For example, Bitcoin Beauty claimed in her presentation that Hypertech generated revenue by mining cryptocurrencies including the stablecoin Tether. The problem is, it is not possible to mine Tether or any other stablecoin. New members paid their membership fees by transferring stablecoins into Hypertech's crypto wallet. This allowed Hypertech to avoid the KYC and anti-fraud protocols enforced by banks. Throughout 2020 and 2021, Hyperfund exploded in popularity, signing on many thousands of investors and raising hundreds of millions of dollars. However, as investors started to withdraw their funds, Sam Lee and Ryan Shu knew that they would quickly run out of money, so they changed the withdrawal system. Instead of being able to withdraw your funds as stablecoins, the money you earned in Hyperfund would be converted into Molecular Future tokens, an altcoin that Ryan Shu created a few years prior. The Molecular Future tokens would be transferred to the Who.com exchange, which Hypertech controlled. Molecular Future was not supported on most exchanges, and Who.com did not allow you to sell the Molecular Future tokens to fiat currencies. You would instead have to convert your Molecular Future tokens to some other cryptocurrency on the Who.com exchange. You would then need to transfer this crypto to a different exchange, where you can sell the crypto and withdraw cash to your bank account. The purpose of making this convoluted system was to make it as complicated and difficult as possible to withdraw your funds. This would encourage people to leave their money in Hyperfund, thereby delaying its eventual collapse. In October of 2021, Facebook rebranded itself as Meta, and they announced they'd be investing billions of dollars to build their virtual reality ecosystem, which they refer to as the Metaverse. This caused a huge amount of media hype around metaverse and virtual reality. Hypertech saw this, and in December of 2021, they also rebranded themselves to Hyperverse. They released a trailer and claimed to be working on a virtual reality video game with NFTs and play-to-earn features. Of course, this game was never developed. They also appointed a new CEO of Hyperverse, a man named Stephen Reese-Lewis. He had an impressive resume, having started his career as a derivatives trader at Goldman Sachs. He later founded a software company which he sold to Adobe. When Goldman Sachs and Adobe were contacted, neither of them had any records of him. As it turns out, Mr. Lewis did not exist. The man in the video was an actor residing in Bangkok, Thailand. After the rebranding, the Ponzi scheme continued to operate the same as it always had. Investors were promised returns of 0.5% to 1% per day, and they made it as difficult as possible to withdraw the funds. The Hyperverse rebranding was purely a marketing gimmick. It appears that Hyperverse wasn't particularly successful, because within just a few months they would rebrand again. Around the same time that Facebook was rebranding to Meta, Netflix released a show called Squid Game, which became an international sensation, garnering hundreds of millions of viewers. The main bad guy in Squid Game was this guy wearing a creepy polygonal mask. For their new rebranding, Hypertech decided to ditch their fake CEO, and replace it with an anonymous guy wearing the Squid Game mask. Instead of Hyperverse, they now call themselves HyperNation, and claim that they would use blockchain to combat injustice and inequality. You could transfer your Hyperverse rewards onto the new HyperNation platform, but you had to pay $10,000 for a new HyperNation NFT to do this. By the summer of 2022, the Ponzi scheme finally collapsed. They no longer had the funds to honor customer withdrawals, and they shut down their Who.com crypto exchange. Between 2020 and 2022, the scheme raised $1.9 billion from investors around the world. Now, thousands of people have lost their life savings. In January of 2024, the US Department of Justice announced criminal charges against Hypertech co-founder Sam Lee and two Hyperfund affiliates, Brenda Chunga and Rodney Burton, better known as Bitcoin Beauty and Bitcoin Rodney. While Chunga and Burton were not involved in the original creation of the scheme, prosecutors alleged that they knew or were reckless in not knowing that they were promoting a scam. Both of them profited to the tune of millions of dollars. Both Chunga and Burton reside in the US. Sam Lee is an Australian citizen residing in the UAE, which has an extradition treaty with the US. Interestingly, Ryan Shu has not yet been charged. His whereabouts are currently unknown. If he returned to his native country of China, extradition would be all but impossible. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about the Hyperfund fraud? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.